And welcome into this episode of Time Out with the Guys. I am Brad Burton. He is Car Foley. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
It's been a little while
Yeah.
since we have done this. Had some things we had to work out. I was in quarantine, which was absolutely terrific. No, it was not fun. But either way, we're back, and we're glad to be talking sports again. It's been over the past couple of weeks. It's been quite the crazy time. Of course, the World Series happened. The Dodgers won that, which was good to see. Football games, of course, have still been going on, despite teams coming down with COVID cases still. But Roger Goodell apparently just wants to plow through it still. I think we all expected that to happen. So either way, though, sports are still hopefully in a full go mode. But like I said, it is good to be back here. And yeah, this past week of football games was pretty spectacular. I saw some good matchups, a lot of close matchups here too. Some teams trying to stay undefeated. Well, one team, that being the Pittsburgh Steelers. Some teams trying to keep on winning still, while some teams just squeezing by just to keep on winning. And speaking of that, let's start off here with the Saints and the Buccaneers, a divisional matchup. So going into this Sunday night matchup, we knew that this was going to be probably the most watched matchup here this past weekend. Drew Brees and the Saints, they just dominated Tampa Bay. And one thing that's pretty obvious to me is this is Drew Brees' division. It's not Tom Brady's. It's not Matt Ryan's. Certainly not Teddy Bridgewater's right now. It is all Drew Brees. Back when Tom Brady signed on with Tampa back in March, people were thinking, oh, this is now Brady's division now. He owns this. Obviously, because you look at Tom Brady, the Super Bowl championships that he has there, 6 of them, Brees only 1. But no doubt, though, Drew Brees, like I said, he owns this division. And certainly the Saints did that on Sunday night, beating the Buccaneers by a score of 38-3. And boy, it was just a spectacular matchup right there. And I'll tell you what, when you look at Drew Brees and the Saints, this is a team that's really kind of been stable throughout his tenure there. They've always been consistent. And overall, I just think it's going to be something to watch out for throughout the rest of the season. Michael Thomas played his first game since week 1, which is good to see. He's been out for quite some time due to an ankle injury. I know he got into a little scuffle with a teammate that caused him to miss a game as well. But overall, though, again, this game was just right from the get-go. The Saints, they set the tone right away, scoring touchdowns, scoring points. At one point, they were up 31-0, I believe. And certainly, like I said, the Saints took Tom Brady and the Buccaneers to school last Sunday night.
Yeah, obviously the Saints were just a complete mismatch for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They absolutely played fantastic, and really nothing could go wrong for them. The defense was on fire. Obviously, Drew Brees scoring the 4 touchdowns, like we mentioned. Obviously, having a really good game for him as well. Taysom Hill as well got some QB snaps too. I think kind of it was in the third quarter, late in the third quarter, he basically ran pretty much like probably 80 yards or something like that, maybe a little bit less to the goal line, and then they subbed in Drew Brees, and he threw a touchdown pass. So that's just kind of the night it was for the New Orleans Saints. And obviously, the Saints did get off to a slow start at the beginning of the season, but obviously now they're on a 4-game win streak, and they've looked really good against some pretty tough teams. Obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they've been a little inconsistent, and obviously they did not play their best at all by any means. But the Saints basically proved that they're going to be a threat in the NFC come postseason time. And, I think this was a really good matchup for the Saints, and the Buccaneers did not show up at all. And obviously the Buccaneers were hoping that they could win this game after the Saints won in week 1, and they just could not do it at all. So this is definitely a tremendous win for the Saints, and has to feel good, obviously, going into their next week of game.
Absolutely. When you look at the Saints this season, you mentioned how they had the slow start there. And the Saints have been kind of known to do that throughout a lot of the time, especially in Drew Brees' tenure there. Same with Sean Payton, too. I remember, I think it was back in 2018, they started off, maybe it was 2-3, 3-3, and then they went on just to have a monster season. I know, of course, it ended the way, which they did not want to end with the BS pass interference that wasn't called there on the Rams. Of course, I know for a lot of Saints fans, they don't want to hear that, but overall, though, still, they just had a bunch of spectacular seasons, despite having a slow start there at the beginning. So overall, though, I think it's just going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Of course, we saw this matchup there in week 1 between the Saints and the Buccaneers. Tom Brady just did not look comfortable out there, and of course, that was just deja vu all over again on Sunday night. The reality is they played much worse than they did in their week 1 matchup. Tom Brady just not the best performance, threw 3 interceptions, no touchdowns. Also had a couple missed throws too there. I know there was one pass there where he threw the deep ball to Gronkowski, and then Gronk just missed it. Of course, Brady did overthrow it right there. But overall, though, for the Saints, like I mentioned, spectacular win for them. As I mentioned, they own this division right now. And for Tampa, I know we talked about here before the show, it's at times they look very unbeatable. They're just having these dominant performances. We saw against the Green Bay Packers. They were just spectacular. Aaron Rodgers, don't know what happened to him. He was just struggling badly. And it looked like Tampa Bay, they finally found their groove and stuff. They were in a rhythm. They look like they can go all the way undefeated the rest of the way, but that was not the case here on Sunday night. And really, again, just the Saints, the defense was pressuring Brady and making all these throws. I know there was one pass where they got to Brady, and he just basically lobbed it up in the air and it got picked off. Of course, you saw that in the highlights, but overall for Tom Brady, he did not look comfortable out there. We saw Bruce Arians kind of talking to him, was like really kind of going after him too. Something we haven't seen a whole lot with Tom Brady, because obviously with Bill Belichick, those two, they knew how to work well together. I think we're kind of starting to see still some growing pains here and there for Tampa Bay. This is a kind of a whole, I don't want to say that they're a whole new team, but just still, when you have a franchise quarterback, a guy that's won 6 Super Bowls, he's been in the league for now 20 years, hard to believe, and he's just been playing great football throughout his entire career. And now we're kind of starting to see him now at 43 years old go through these struggles a little bit, trying to find a new trying to find how to work with these guys. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that works out, especially in the postseason, because no doubt the Buccaneers, they will make the playoffs probably, but the question is, though, how is that going to all play out when those guys do get into the playoffs? Because you got to think, with Tampa Bay, they haven't been to the playoffs in quite some time, and a lot of these players, they don't have that playoff experience, unlike Brady and Gronk. So that'd be interesting to see how that all works out.
Yeah, obviously, it was definitely not a good game for the Buccaneers at all, and you got to give all the credit to the Saints. And Buccaneers are a pretty heavy offensive team, and they only had 8 yards of total rushing yards on the game, and you can't do that against a good team like the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, the defense for the Buccaneers did not show up at all too, but it goes both ways. When you hope that your offense can go down, keep you in the game, and obviously when the defense goes out and the Saints score after however many minutes, they're gassed, they're tired, and they couldn't convert. The Buccaneers couldn't really convert on a third down to save their life in that game either. So obviously the defense was gassed. They had a lot of mental errors out there. The offense could not do anything rushing, obviously, like we just mentioned. So it was just a really weird game for the Buccaneers, and obviously, they're going to have to bounce back. I believe they play Carolina coming up, so that's going to be a big game for them. Obviously, Carolina has been kind of struggling the last few games. Obviously, they had Christian McCaffrey back, but
he's hurt now again.
He suffered a shoulder injury, so he's going to be out again. So obviously, that's a good sign for the Buccaneers. But they definitely have to show up and play their style. But it's going to be interesting to see, but obviously the Saints, give them all the credit, played excellent on Sunday Night Football. Really just could not be stopped in all 3 phases of the game, and they deserve all the credit.
Absolutely, for sure. Just a spectacular matchup by the New Orleans Saints. And for Tampa, I think going into a matchup with Carolina, another divisional opponent, that is a must-win situation right there for them. So I'd be curious to see how that all works out. So going to be really interesting to see how that's all going to play out. Now moving on to our next game here, the Steelers and the Cowboys. Of course, the Steelers looking to remain undefeated, and they certainly did that. It was kind of a slow start for them. Really, at times, Dallas looked like that they were having their own way, being up 13-9 there at the halftime, and then of course Dallas kind of riding their own way and stuff. They're up 16-9, but then Pittsburgh in the fourth quarter scored 15 unanswered points, and they were able to get the win 24-19. And of course, for Dallas, Garrett Gilbert started for him. Andy Dalton's been out with a concussion. And I think for Dallas, this is just kind of a season now. If they lost Dak Prescott, now it's just off-season mode. Get a high draft pick and see where you can go from there. For Pittsburgh, I think this was a game that we thought that this was going to be a dominant performance by them. Certainly, at times, it looked very slow. The running game was not there for him. Ben Roethlisberger, not a bad game for him. 29 out of 42, 306 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. no picks there. But like I said, the Pittsburgh running game was not there when it needed to be. James Conner only 9 carries for 22 yards. So, of course, a lot of these wins that we're talking about here, too, the running game just hasn't not been there for Pittsburgh at times throughout the season. But luckily, though, they've been able to kind of pull out some wins here and there. And, of course, they are undefeated, of course, being 8-0. But some of those wins have been kind of at a close call. But certainly, though, for Dallas, give credit to them. They hung in there. The fourth quarter, though, they just could not complete the deal. So, of course, if you want to win football games, you have to finish them out, and that's what Dallas was not able to do. Certainly wouldn't have made a difference for them if they would have won. They would have been 3-6. Of course, in that division right now, who knows? It could have made a huge difference for them because that division, as we all know, is not great. It's weak. The Giants, the Eagles, the Washington football team, and the Cowboys. Honestly, I think who was it? Terry Bradshaw or somebody from Fox Sports said whoever gets 6 wins is going to win that division. So
yeah,
it's probably not wrong. I'll give him that. So we'll see what happens with that. But again, no, for the Steelers, they remain undefeated. Cowboys dropped to 2-7. Who knows? They could go 5-11 and still get first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's the thing about that division. Obviously, if the Cowboys were in the NFC West, it'd be a whole different story. They wouldn't even stand a chance. But because they're in the weakest division in football, it's still a possibility for them to win it. Obviously, all those teams in that division are mediocre. Let's just say that. We'll put it nicely.
Yeah.
But obviously the Eagles have been kind of finding their groove, still playing obviously in a weak division. So it's kind of hard to tell. Obviously they really haven't played anybody too difficult at this moment in time. So, but it's still up in the air. And I think, if you're Coach Mike McCarthy, you got to tell your guys, hey, it's still anybody's grasp of, clinching the division. So tough loss for the Cowboys, though. I mean, that definitely would have been a nice spark for them in the locker room and hopefully going forward if they could beat an undefeated Steelers team. Obviously, that has to feel good, after a win like that. But obviously, they couldn't finish the deal. Pittsburgh scored 15 points in the fourth quarter alone. So, defense obviously has not been the Cowboys' best spot. Let's just say that. Obviously, when Dak was still around, the offense was just carrying the team, and the defense was just letting anybody score on them, kind of like what Seattle is allowing opponents to do right now as well. So, obviously, tough loss for the Cowboys, but I think they just have to, realize that, they're still in the division. And if you're the Steelers too, you have a pretty, next few games are going to be pretty easy. I think they play the Bengals, and then there's another opponent in there too that is favorable for the Steelers. So there's a real possibility they could be 10-0. After week 12. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see. And, I still think Kansas City is probably the best team in the AFC. I just think that, the Steelers have kind of had some easy opponents this year for the most part, but we do have to give the Pittsburgh Steelers credit. Their defense is incredible so far, and they have really played well against some tough teams as well. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of, how the Steelers, play moving on too. And if they could stay healthy, I think, they're definitely going to be a top seed in the AFC. Just how far will they go? That's the real question.
Yeah, for sure. I think when you look, when you look at a team like the Steelers this season, how they've kind of had some easy opponents here and there, been able to get those wins, but no, their defense has definitely come through when they needed to be. And I saw today for through 65 straight games they've had at least one sack, and that's pretty spectacular when you look at that. And that goes all the way back to past previous couple seasons there in the past. So definitely credit to that Steelers defense for being tough, hanging in there, and still just playing very spectacular football. Mike Tomlin's been there since I believe 2007. He's just done a great job for them, and definitely he is one of the best coaches here, best active coaches right now in the league. I know there's been times where people have been calling for his job because the Steelers maybe have had a couple down seasons back to back, and they just feel and they feel a new voice needs to be there. But Mike Tomlin, no, he is that guy right now that needs to be there, I think, throughout the long run. You can say, depending on how that's all going to turn out. But like I said, for Mike Tomlin to be there since 2007, maintain this amount of great success. I know, of course, the Super Bowl results haven't been there. They've won one with him, but hey, when you get to have a coach for that long, he's done a really good job. So credit to the Steelers, that whole team there. Ben Roethlisberger coming off an injury-plagued season last year where he got hurt in the second game, missed the entire season. This year, he looks rejuvenated, looks really good. So credit to him and that team for still being very consistent throughout this whole season. Now moving on to our next game here. with the Carolina Panthers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Oh, the Chiefs, they just got by with the win, 33-31. Patrick Mahomes, spectacular game for him, 30 out of 45, over 370 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. But the Chiefs running game, total stats for them, 11 carries, 36 yards. So didn't run the ball a whole lot. Mostly it was just an offense passing game for him. Of course, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, both over 100 yards receiving. Kelce, 159 yards to be exact, and Tyreek Hill, 2 touchdowns with him on 113 receiving yards. So obviously with the Kansas City Chiefs, the running game just was not there for them. Of course, when you have 11 carries, you didn't run the ball a whole lot. And for Carolina, they almost came up there with the upset, too. That would have been really spectacular for them when you beat a dominant team like the Kansas City Chiefs. Teddy Bridgewater, 36 out of 49, just over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns there. Christian McCaffrey, like we mentioned, his first game back from his injury, but unfortunately he would get hurt again, this time with a shoulder injury, and it appears he will not be playing this coming week. So that's a tough break there for Carolina. I know this year for Carolina, bringing in Teddy Bridgewater from the Saints to be your starting quarterback this year. Then you have Christian McCaffrey there that can do it all pretty much. He can run the ball, he can catch the ball, just do all these spectacular things, and that's what he did on Sunday. But the injuries just came back to him, unfortunately. And I know it's been a year of injury plague, of injuries for him. But overall, though, for Carolina to be 3-6, I know that's not where they want to be at, but still, though, to kind of maintain somewhat of a, I don't want to say success, but just still hanging in there during these challenging games. So credit to them for doing that. Matt Rule has done I would say, a good job so far. And once they get that team healthy, they could be down. They could be tough to stop. I know, of course, when they played against the Bears, they really gave the Bears a hard time, despite Christian McCaffrey not being out there. But they still gave the Bears something to work for. And hey, when you can do that, that's something to be proud of. You still got to get those wins, and I know that's what they'll try to do throughout the rest of the season, despite being in a tough division there with the Saints and Tampa Bay, and I know Atlanta too has been kind of up and down as well. But still, though, for Carolina, though, I think they're at a good point. Though, just gotta stay healthy, and then the results will be there for them. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think Carolina is kind of like the LA Chargers in a way. They're so close. They have a pretty decent offense for the most part, but they just they can't finish games. And I think that's the big problem with the Carolina Panthers. And obviously not having Christian McCaffrey, one of the best backs in the league, definitely doesn't help your team on offense by any means. Obviously, I think the defense for the most part, they do a good job. The offense, I think it's going to take a little bit of time for Teddy Bridgewater to kind of get used to it, the system and everything. But he's been playing really good so far. So. I think they're just, it might not be their year this year, obviously, like you mentioned, being in a tough division, obviously with the Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think right now you're just focusing on getting better as a team and kind of getting ready for next year at this point. Obviously, it'd be a miracle if they were to make the playoffs at this point, but I think you're just kind of gelling with everybody. Keep everybody kind of on the same page, and just try to win as many games as you can. But I think I think they realize that they're a pretty good football team for the most part. They're just in a tough division, and it's just hard to close out games for them. But obviously, like you mentioned too, with the Chiefs, just an incredible game for Patrick Mahomes throwing the football. Just absolutely incredible. The rushing wasn't quite there for them, but obviously when you have a guy like Patrick, sometimes you don't even need it. Obviously Kansas City defense, playing really good this year. So that's kind of why I mentioned earlier too. I think Kansas City is going to be obviously a Super Bowl favorite. I think, they have the best quarterback in the league in Patrick Mahomes, and their defense is probably in the top 5, I would say, so far. I mean, they've looked really, really good on defense. So, it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, if they can stay healthy, I definitely think they're going to be a lock. It's either them or probably Pittsburgh. But, we're just going to have to wait and see. But definitely a good come-from-behind win for the Kansas City Chiefs. I was watching, part of that game, and I thought Carolina was, going to kind of explode and not let them come back. But when you have Patrick Mahomes on your team and a solid defense to get some stops here and there when you need them, it's hard. It's hard to beat good teams like that.
Absolutely, definitely does make it does make it tough, especially for the for the defense. But no, Pat Mahomes, he just did what he does best, is just finding a way to win. And I know for the Chiefs, it's kind of been their, I don't want to say if it's been their motto, of course, when they're down and then they come, and then they rise back up. But of course, we've seen a lot from Kansas City. It just kind of takes a little time for them to get into a groove during the game. Of course, we saw last year in the playoffs, against Houston. They were down big time, like 24 to whatever score it was. They were in single digits, and then pretty soon before you know it, they tied the game back up, and then they took the lead and just dominated the rest of the way. So for Kansas City, that's been nothing for them. But of course, still getting just squeezing by here, only by 2 points. That is pretty spectacular right there. And Patrick Mahomes, no doubt, he is one of the best active quarterback right now. Of course, we can say, there's Russell and Breeze and Brady, all those guys, but Patrick Mahomes, so he is very spectacular and just doing what he does best there. And the whole Chiefs team there too. Are they the best team in the AFC? I think right now they are, but boy, you look at Pittsburgh and of course with Buffalo, which we'll dive into right now against this. I know.
Do we have to?
Why not? Don't worry, we'll make it quick for you. I know it was a tough game for you. Hey, my team lost too. Okay, so
Yeah.
don't worry.
I can feel your pain.
Yeah, well, my pain's been there throughout the season, despite having 5 wins still somehow. For Buffalo, are they also the best team in the AFC? Hey, I don't know. That's up for grabs right now, I would say. But Buffalo, they would get by the Seahawks by a score of 44-34. So a high-scoring game right there. It's always good to see those types of games right there when it's just kind of an offensive battle right there, and the defense just can't seem to do nothing about it. But unfortunately for the Seahawks, I'm sorry, Carter, they just came up. Russell Wilson, a tough day for him. 4 turnovers total, 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles that he lost. And Buffalo was able to just kind of take advantage of that and just carry it on there. Seattle, though, at times it looked like that they could come back and pull this one off. But unfortunately, Buffalo, they just had the momentum on their side and just able to come out there with the win. I'll tell you what, I know I said this before probably many times now. When Josh Allen came out in 2018, from college into the draft, I was thinking, okay, he's not really good. His college stats didn't really throw me off. They weren't spectacular by any means. But, boy, when he came into the league and stuff, he really impressed me a lot his rookie season. Still struggle at times. Of course, that's what you do when you're a rookie quarterback. You're going to have those growing pains. But he really impressed me a lot of the time. And then last season, that's when you kind of start to see him take those next steps and really apply them and just take off here with this team in Buffalo right now is having a very spectacular season. I know it's easy to say with Tom Brady not being there with New England now, but who knows if Tom Brady was there, would Buffalo still maintain this success? I think they would. It's not all about, I think with Buffalo, we've seen them grow over the past couple seasons, becoming a dominant team. Certainly would be interesting if Tom Brady was still there with the Patriots, but I think overall Buffalo would still be having their ways this season with all the success they've been having right now, and certainly we'll see what they can do. I know they're 7-2 right now, but now is a time where you have to keep it going because this is where teams may start to think, hey, we're riding pretty high right now. Let's just see where we go. We don't have to keep playing as hard as we need to. No, this is a time right now where you have to keep on going. It reminds me in 2012 when the Bears were 7-1 and they ended up finishing 10-6, just missing the playoffs. So this is a time right now here, kind of halfway through the season where you just have to now kind of stay mentally focused because this will be a grind now. Teams that are still in the hunt will be hungry and they'll be coming after you. So for Buffalo, they need to do that. But I think that with the season that they're having right now, they will be able to do that.
Yeah, obviously, Buffalo is an incredibly good football team, and watching on Sunday the game, obviously with Seattle, you could see that Josh Allen is obviously the real deal. Obviously, Seattle's pass defense is 32nd in the lead, so it's it's not hard to do what he did against a defense like that. But it was still impressive for the most part. He made really smart decisions, no interceptions on the game, 3 touchdowns, 415 yards. So incredible numbers, obviously, for Josh Allen. But I think. I think Buffalo just came ready to play in that game. I think, the defense was ready. Obviously, they had 5 sacks. I think they pressured Wilson. I think it was like 16 or 17 times in the game, which was the most in the NFL this season. I was getting flashbacks from 2017 when the offensive line for Seattle was terrible and they couldn't do anything. It was literally just Russ running out of the pocket, trying to survive and, just trying to not die out there. So that was just a weird game for the offensive line. Obviously, the defense, they have some problems. I know Jamal's been out for a few weeks, and that was his first game back. And obviously they didn't have Shaquille Griffin and Quentin Dunbar. Obviously has been having like a knee issue, so he got burned a couple times in that game, and you could just tell he wasn't really quite healthy enough to be out there on the football field. So that was unfortunate to see. But I think, Seattle's defense, hopefully they can come back and be a little bit better. Obviously, their run defense is pretty good. I believe they're 8th in the NFL, but the passing, we saw it in the game. The Bills barely even rushed. They only rushed for 34 yards on the game, and all the offense was pretty much in the air because they knew that's where the weakness was for the Seattle defense. So. Yeah. Obviously, tough game for Seattle, and I kind of looking at Russell Wilson. Obviously, no, it was not his best game by any means. Two interceptions and 2 fumbles, like you mentioned, but it's hard for him to do everything. Obviously, without Chris Carson, Carlos Hyde, no running game really. Obviously, Rashad Penny is still kind of recovering from that ACL injury. I think he should be back in a week or two, which would be obviously really good news for Seattle's rushing game because they only rushed for 57 yards, so it was really just Russell just trying to keep his team in it. And I believe at one point too in the third quarter that the Seahawks were only down by 7. They could have easily come back, but the defense just couldn't keep the points off the board, and it was just Russell trying to make things happen. And it's unfortunate, but I think they're going to play a lot better versus the Rams this coming week. If Chris Carson doesn't come back, hopefully. Maybe Hyde comes back or Dallas has another sensational game like he did against the 49ers. But, it's just going to take some time. And, hopefully the injuries have been a big part of a lot of teams, especially the San Francisco 49ers. I think they have the most injuries in the whole NFL, honestly, on one team. So, but injuries have really plagued the Seahawks this year, kind of like they did last year too. So hopefully if some guys can get healthy, they'll be ready for a postseason run, and hopefully all their guys are there.
Yeah, it's definitely been a tough break for the 49ers, just dealing with all the injuries that they had this year. Nick Bosa, his ACL gave out there in week 2. Jimmy Garoppolo and George Kittle are both on IR right now. I think Garoppolo should be able to come back sooner, but definitely George Kittle, though, with a broken bone in his foot. That's going to be tough to see if he can come back this year. But, no, yeah, kind of getting back now to Russell Wilson there. Of course, we need to kind of take matters into your own hands most of the time and stuff. When you don't have your running backs, of course, we know that Russell Wilson, he is a good mobile QB, but he can't do it all by himself, though, like you said. So he's going to do a lot more than what he has to do. So definitely Buffalo has that advantage, to use at him. So I think, for Seattle, hey, a tough loss for them, I know, but this is kind of a loss where maybe they can kind of gather up and just see what they can do, learn from their mistakes. And I think it'll be interesting to see what they can do. Like we said, we got a divisional opponent coming up, which we'll get into here shortly. But definitely, I think this is kind of now a go time for them. Here, learn from your mistakes, go out there and just keep on doing what you have to do. And I know for Seattle, they will do that. So that'd be interesting to see how that's all going to work out. So now that we're, you can say we're halfway or just over halfway through the season, kind of looking at, looking at where teams are at right now. I know, I know when we gave our predictions back in August, it was kind of be fun to see where we would be at. And I know some teams, they've really impressed us so far, and some teams that we thought would have good seasons, they just haven't been there. So kind of starting off here with the AFC East. We know Buffalo going into the season, like we already talked about here, they would have a really good season, I think. And I think when you look at them, just a whole team, Sean McDermott doing a spectacular job coaching this team. Josh Allen just keeps on growing each and every season. But look at Miami right now, 5-3. And they started Tua. They benched Ryan Fitzpatrick, which I know we were kind of talking about, like, why would they do that? Because Fitzpatrick's been doing a pretty good job for him so far this year, but they want to get Tua in there. I thought for Tua this year was kind of be like a redshirt year for him, like it would be in college. He came off a really bad injury last year with Alabama. Didn't know if he would even play again, and if he would play again, would he be the guy that he once was for Bama? So far, he's looking not too bad. And I would say for Tua, they have a good quarterback in there with him, a franchise quarterback. I know that's what they said with Ryan Tannehill, but that's in the past now. He's doing really good there with Tennessee. For the Patriots, COVID's really kind of screwed them up this whole year. We can say that for them. With Cam being out for some games because of COVID, and for the Patriots just having their struggles here and there. I knew they would have their struggles this year, but didn't know that it would kind of be this bad for them. You kind of thought maybe early on the struggles would be there, but they would get into a groove and go from there. But I definitely think right now for the Patriots, if they still want to try and get that playoff spot, it'll probably be most likely as a wild card spot, and you gotta get past Miami. That could be a little bit challenging. So we'll see what happens with that. The Jets, yeah, they're just bad. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. Obviously, I think the most surprising thing for me is Miami being 5-3. Obviously, they have a really good defense. I think they're in the rank or in the top 5 of defenses, and obviously they had a strip fumble for a touchdown. Thank you, Miami defense, because I had you on fantasy last week. But yeah, I mean, they've been playing really good. Brian Flores has been. Obviously, he comes from the Bill Belichick tree, and he's been coaching this squad, and they look really good. And I don't think they're going to be a contender this year by any means, but this is a great start. Obviously, Miami has been kind of known for not really doing anything much come in the season or anything like that. So for them to kind of get back on this winning culture, it has to feel good for the guys in the locker room, especially for the guys that have been there for a while. So. Definitely have to feel good about that. Obviously, we already talked about Buffalo, but I think they're the real deal. I think they're probably going to win in division unless Miami really can start to figure some more stuff on offense. Like I said, I think the defense is definitely legit, but I think the offense is, they need a little bit more time. And obviously with Tua being a rookie, it's going to take some time, and I think everybody realizes that. So, I definitely could see Miami possibly making it to the wild card if they keep it up. But at this point, definitely Buffalo's division.
Absolutely. Like I said, the Jets, they're just bad. I don't know what's going to happen to him. I mean, Sam Darnold, he is a good QB. He just needs a much better team around him. I don't know what's going to happen with Trevor Lawrence. I know what's going around. Tank for Trevor is what they're saying on Twitter. But I don't know. Sam Darnold, I think he just needs a much better team around him. It's certainly not. It's not his fault. Adam Gase, he's a great offensive coordinator. He's just not a really good head coach.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is there, but we'll see what happens with that. Now moving on to the AFC North. Of course, we talked about with Pittsburgh being 8-0. Baltimore still hanging in there at 6-2. Cleveland as well, 5-3. I know Baker now is dealing with some COVID issues himself. I think he was put on the COVID list, so that's a tough break or really a tough blow there for Cleveland. But who knows what's going to happen? I know with Odell tearing his ACL, that was also a really tough blow for them as well. But still hanging in there though at 5-3 for Cleveland. Last year we thought they would make the big step there, possibly making the playoffs, going to the playoffs, winning the division, but that was not the case. And this year we were going to wait and see what's going to happen. Still hanging in there at 5-3. Cincinnati, Joey Burrow, I know this is kind of be a year of struggles for them, but still though, to be 2-5-1, I know it's not spectacular, but hey, it's better than last year, honestly. I mean, you're still competing, you're giving teams a run for their money still. So I would definitely say for Cincinnati, they got a bright future ahead of them. Just have to kind of get some more guys in there, get into a rhythm and some more games and stuff. And and who knows what's going to happen. Certainly they're probably going to finish probably with about 5 to 6 wins, I would say. Who knows what's going to happen with that. But overall, though, I think they still have a bright future ahead of them. But for Pittsburgh, like we talked about there, being 8-0, I think things are going their way right now. Baltimore, it's kind of been a little for Lamar Jackson up and down in some ways for him. One game he's going to do really good. Next game he's kind of not going to have the stats that he had the previous game. But overall, though, I think for Baltimore, they're still hanging in there. And who knows, with Pittsburgh, could they go on a late season collapse? Who knows? This is sports. We've seen a lot of crazy things happen here.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because this division kind of reminds me of how the NFC West was last season. Obviously, the 49ers being 8-0, Seattle was kind of right behind them, the Rams, and then you had the Cardinals. So, I think this is going to be a division that's going to be good for a really long time. I think Cincinnati is only going to get better. Obviously, I love the new head coach in Cleveland. He's been doing an excellent job. Obviously, they lost Odell, so that's going to be kind of tough for them. But I think obviously they're on the winning track now, and could be a wild card depending on how Baltimore does. But obviously Baltimore, I think the defense is legit. I think obviously Lamar has not played as well. Obviously he's played really good against the really bad teams, but kind of when obviously his team needs him against these tough teams like Pittsburgh, he kind of doesn't show up as often as I think everybody would like him to. So he's still young. He's still only in his first few seasons. So obviously he won the MVP. So it's hard to get even better than that. But he's kind of had some struggles here and there, and we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens with the Baltimore Ravens. But hey, they're still 6-2, still a really good record. and obviously with the Pittsburgh Steelers, 8-0, like we talked about, the defense is legit. Offense, they have a lot of good offensive weapons. If you can keep everybody healthy, it's still a pretty good football team. And, I know they're going to be hoping to get the number 1 seed so they can have a week off. But Kansas City, they're right there, right behind them. I mean, they're 8-1, but they played 1 extra week too. So we'll just kind of have to, wait and see what happens with that. But it's a good division so far, and obviously the Bengals, they'll get there eventually.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Joey Burrow's going to have a bright future here in this league, so definitely be exciting to see how that's all going to work out. Now moving on to the AFC South here. When you look at Tennessee, of course, we knew coming off the season last year, when they made it to the playoffs, they beat the Patriots, which was a big upset for them. So far this year, they're having a really good season at 6-2. I know early on with COVID, they were having some struggles there, figuring out what's going to happen with them going throughout the season, but luckily though they've gotten back on track to maintain some winning games still, so that's been really good to see. With the Colts, with Phillip Rivers there being in his first season, it's been kind of good to see the Colts kind of get back on track. I know last year when Andrew Luck made the sudden announcement that he was going to be retiring, that kind of put the Colts there in a tough spot with Jacoby Brissett there being there as their starting quarterback. But to get a veteran guy like Phillip Rivers, I know he is 38 years old, going to be 39 here soon. But still, though, having that veteran guy who's been to the playoffs before, knows how to win, and I know he doesn't have a Super Bowl championship, but he still, though, knows what it takes to put together a really solid team, and that's what he's done so far this season. No, it's been kind of just more than him, but still, though, for the Colts still to be 5-3 at this point, that's pretty good. For Houston, well, we knew what was going to happen this year for them. They just, to trade away the Andre Hopkins like that, and to get David Johnson. I know he's a really good player, but he's been banged up throughout the past couple of seasons there with injuries. So that was just probably not what they needed to do. And of course, Bill Bryan, he got the boot. He's out. So I think for Houston, throughout going the rest of the way this season, just try and get into that positive offseason there, maybe get a high draft pick there, kind of build around there, with Deshaun Watson and see where you can go from there. But for Jacksonville, too, I know last year Gardner Minshew was supposed to be their guy. He's been kind of banged up with injuries so far this year. For Jacksonville, to be 1-7 is not what they expected to be.
No.
I know for a team like Jacksonville, they were hoping to kind of be up there with the Colts and even the Titans, probably trying to stay in the playoff hunt. And so far this year, that just has not been what it was supposed to be for them this year. But for Jacksonville, once they get healthy and again probably get a high draft pick, they will hopefully kind of get back to where they once were in 2017. They look to be one of the best teams there in the AFC with Blake Bortles even at quarterback. But for Jacksonville, not the year that they were hoping to be. But still, though, who knows what's going to happen? Try and rack up some good wins here and there, and also maybe get the high draft pick. We'll see what's going to happen with them.
Yeah, obviously this is kind of an interesting division. Obviously, I thought the Texans would be a little bit better than they have been just because they have Deshaun Watson, but they really have struggled. And obviously they're playing against some tough divisional opponents, obviously, in the Indianapolis Colts and Tennessee Titans, who have been over 500 this season. And obviously the Tennessee Titans kind of had those two weird games where they played against the Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers that they both lost. And obviously, I think the Titans had a good comeback, too, against that game versus the Steelers, but they were just a little bit shy. But, this is an incredibly good football team in the AFC. So I think they're going to be obviously, they kind of did have like a struggling season last year, but they still made it to the AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs. And, Kansas City was just obviously incredible last season. So it's going to be really hard for them to, win that game. But still, that, it's a good sign for this football team so that they're 6-2, because this is a good team. They kept a lot of their really good players for the most part, and I definitely think they'll make a really good difference come postseason time. Obviously, the Colts, I think they're probably a wild card team just because they have a really solid defense once again. Obviously, Phillip Rivers, he's a good veteran. Makes mistakes here and there, obviously, but I think he's been a little bit better with the Colts this season, what I've noticed when I watch games from him. But, it would be kind of interesting to see. Obviously, when you're playing in a division that obviously has two teams that are performing not so well, let's just put that nicely, it's easier to get some of those wins too. So, They just have to kind of keep it up. Defense has to keep playing good, and I think the offense will kind of get flowing too, and Philip will get more comfortable with those guys as well. Obviously, we already mentioned the Texans kind of struggling here, but Jacksonville. I mean, they did have the best defense back in 2017 when they went to the AFC Championship game. Obviously, just a game shy. And I think they're kind of rebuilding. They're in the rebuilding phase. I don't know if Gardner Minshew is the guy. Obviously, like you mentioned, he has been hurt, so it's been kind of hard to predict. And they don't have a lot of key players on offense, not a lot of key players on defense. Obviously, they got rid of Ramsey, so. It's kind of one of those weird years for the Jacksonville Jaguars. What are they going to do come draft time? And, it's just an interesting team, and you don't even know where to kind of start when it comes to this team and how to make them better. So, I think at this point they're just going to, probably keep losing games and try to get a high draft pick, obviously come next season.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Just going to be interesting to see what's happening with that. Now moving on to the AFC West. We know with Kansas City, they're just the dominant team right now throughout the AFC. Of course, we'll see what Pittsburgh and Buffalo can do with them. But no shock here to see them up on top right there, sitting there at 8-1. For the Raiders, though, to be 5-3, I know last year they kind of showed signs of promise. Of course, in 2018, when they got all the heat for trading away Khalil Mack, and then they hired John Gruden back on a 10-year contract worth $100 million. Something the contract's a bit ridiculous, but right now, though, for Las Vegas now, they're definitely hanging in there at 5-3. To be 5-3 at this point, if you're the Raiders, that's pretty spectacular right there. And Derek Carr's he's doing a pretty good job so far this year. Josh Jacobs, same thing for him. So credit to those guys. I know to be their first season in Las Vegas, but to not have any fans there isn't what they expected. But definitely next year, hopefully once fans are allowed to go back in, hopefully that will be the case. That stadium is going to be blowing up with some good Raiders fans there from Las Vegas. So that'd be really fun to see how that's all going to go. But to be, like I said, are allowed to go back though, at this point throughout the season, that's pretty good. So credit to them for hanging in there with the Chiefs. Who knows what's going to happen? They could get that wild card spot, maybe, depending on where they're at in the entire AFC. So we'll see what happens with that. For Denver, 3-5. I know this year for them it's just kind of been a year of Von Miller, of course, being out for the season with an injury, and then just defensive wise, just kind of dealing with injuries here and there. Vic Fangio, is the head coach material? I don't know. Last year being his first year, it was kind of like, okay, get through the year, kind of see what you can do. But this year, it's just not paying off for him so far. So we'll see what happens with Vic. I'm not saying he's going to be a coach that's going to be on the line, but though you still wonder, though, is he head coach material? We'll wait and see. Is he just better fit for a defensive coordinator role? Maybe he is. Maybe he's not. We'll see what's going to happen. I think once you get some better guys there around him, who knows what Denver could do if they had those guys. With the Chargers, we talked about them early on, with them being in very close matchups, but just not being able to finish it off. To be 2-6, well, come this year, you were kind of expecting to have a down season. But Justin Herbert, though, he is going to have a spectacular career. He's showing a lot of signs of promise for them. And offensive-wise, not doing bad. Of course, they have, a -11 differential there when it comes to offense, points scored and points allowed. So when you look at a team like the Chargers, though, they are a team that is going to be competing, I think, for quite some time. Of course, with Kansas City, who knows what's going to happen? It could be the Herbert-Mahomes rivalry that could be starting up here very soon. So don't be shocked if that happens because, like I said, they do have a bright future ahead of them. But overall, though, this division right now, Kansas City, no doubt, they're on top right now.
Yeah, and just to kind of go back to what you were saying about Herbert, yeah, he has looked absolutely fantastic. And honestly, when looking at the games, especially the last few weeks from the Chargers, this should be honestly a 5-3, maybe 4-4 football team easily. But they just can't finish games. That's the problem. And they don't have a lot of vets that really kind of know how to do it. Obviously, Herbert's a rookie. They gotta learn to finish games. I think this is a really good potential football team right here because they should easily be 500, if not a little bit higher than that. They just got to finish games. Obviously, last week against the Raiders, tough one. Against the Broncos, another tough one. Chiefs, another tough one. So all these games are happening in the division, and they've all lost them. So if they can learn just to kind of finish these games and go out, I think they're going to be set for the future. But yeah, Herbert is looking really good. Obviously, they have some good weapons too on offense, and so I think they'll be okay. But obviously, I think this year it's probably not going to be the year. And Denver Broncos, obviously, kind of like you mentioned, having some injuries. Drew Lock has been playing decently. Obviously, he's still pretty young, and obviously they've had some injuries too on the defensive side, like losing Von Miller. That's a tough one. So. It's kind of a little early to tell. I think they're definitely doing a little bit better than I thought they were going to do at this point in the season. So, I think they're all going to get better as well as the season continues. Raiders, I think this one kind of shocked me as well. I don't know if I was anticipating the Raiders to be as good as I thought they were going to be this season, but Derek Carr has really kind of transformed this season. He's been looking incredible. In the last few games that he's been playing in. So, obviously, I think this is a really good football team. And with Derek Carr, as long as he stays healthy, I think they're going to go pretty far. And then obviously Kansas City. What do we have to say about them? I mean, they're honestly probably the best football team in the league. Great defense, great offense, offensive weapons, best quarterback. I mean, it's obviously the record shows why they're 8-1, and it doesn't really come to a surprise for anybody.
No, not at all. I think when you look at a team like Patrick Mahomes, they just have the guys there. Tyreek Hill is just he's a spectacular wide receiver. Travis Kelce, no doubt, one of the best tight ends here. Of course, him and Kittle, no doubt they are the two best tight ends when they're both healthy. Of course, with George Kittle, it's been a tough season for him right now, dealing with some injuries. But like I said, once he's healthy, boy, he is tough to stop. Same with Kelce, too. Boy, those two are spectacular when they're both playing. So real curious to see how it's all going to play out there with Kansas City throughout the rest of the season. No doubt they are going to be on the rise for a second straight Super Bowl championship. Could they get it? Probably. Could they not get it? Well, who knows what's going to happen with that, but still, though, very dominant division right there. Kansas City is just spectacular. Not a whole lot of bad things to say about them right now. Now moving on to the NFC East now. Yeah, this division here is look at it. It's just not good.
It's not great.
Guys, there's not a lot to say. Philadelphia 3-4-1. Oh gosh. Ugh. And then Washington,
not
Dallas.
Even 500.
No, they're. Oh gosh, it's just bad. Yeah, not a lot to say about this division. Yeah, you can win 4 games and you're still going to get first place somehow. Washington, hey, Alex Smith, he'll be making his first start since that devastating injury, so that's going to be really good to see him back out there, seeing what he can do. I know he's played here and there at times this year, but to finally be out there for his first start this year, that's going to be really cool to see. So definitely keep an eye out for that. I know, of course, the game's not going to be spectacular itself for Washington, but to see Alex Smith back out there is going to be spectacular. And the Giants, Saquon's out for the year. I know, a tough blow for them. Dallas, Dak's done for the year too. So not a whole lot to say about them.
Yeah, obviously not a pretty division. We talked about this a little bit earlier today and in the show, and it's not pretty. But the best thing about this division for all these teams is, like we mentioned, it's still anybody's division. It's crazy. Obviously the Giants and the Eagles are a little bit less fortunate because they do have obviously one extra game played too, and it's also a loss, so that doesn't favor well for them. But there's still a little bit more games to be played, so it's still anybody's division. So obviously losing Saquon for the Giants, that's a huge blow. Week 2 against the Bears. Thanks, Brad, because he was on my fantasy team.
Hey, don't blame me.
No, I'm just kidding. But obviously that's a really tough blow for the offense. Daniel Jones, I feel like he should have made a little bit more progress. He kind of seems like he doesn't make the best decisions too sometimes when he's in the pocket. I don't know, maybe he could be a little bit more mobile, but maybe his team doesn't want him to be. I don't know exactly the whole reason behind it. Cowboys, I mean, they're just a disaster without Dak. Defense is terrible. Obviously, they're on their 3rd or 4th string quarterback at this point. Wide receivers really aren't doing much either. So it's a tough team to watch, to be honest with you. Washington, obviously. I think they have potential. I think they've been kind of banged up with injuries as well, and also the Washington football team. So they're just cursed to be not so good. Eagles, obviously, I think have the best chance at winning this division at this point. I mean, they've just been playing better against these teams that they've played so far. So I think Carson Wentz is kind of honestly, I think he's the best quarterback in this division. No problem. He's been playing better. I'm not going to say he's been playing great because he hasn't, but he's been playing better the last few games. And obviously they had a bye week too, so hopefully maybe they'll be a little bit better for the games to come in the future. But I think the Eagles are probably going to win this division, but they can't get too comfortable.
No, you're absolutely right. I think when you look at a team, like the Eagles, they do have the best shot at making the playoffs probably throughout this division. But yeah, you look at Washington, Dallas, and the Giants each with all three with 2 wins each. So make the playoffs without your best players. Hey, that's something you can say. But certainly the record wise is not going to be spectacular. But certainly right now this division will be up for grabs up until the final week of the season, that being week 17. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. Now moving on to the NFC North. The Packers, no doubt that they're on top right now. Was not shocked to see them. Aaron Rodgers has looked rejuvenated so far this season. I know when they drafted Jordan Love, people were saying Aaron Rodgers is on his last leg possibly, but so far this season he's looked very spectacular, doing a really good job. And Chicago 5-4, surprisingly, they're that. I know they've come off back-to-back losses there against the Saints and now the Tennessee Titans. So for the Bears right now, to be 5-4 is somehow a big surprise for them. Minnesota 3-5, a little shocked to see that. I know this year coming off a playoff spot or making the playoffs last year, we were thinking that the Vikings could be a team that would try to be still competing, not even for a playoff spot, but for the division as well. But certainly this year for them, you trade Stephon Diggs to Buffalo. That kind of puts a gap there at your wide receiver spot. And for Detroit to be 3-5, I know it's kind of been their thing. Matthew Stafford, he's a really good quarterback, but he needs a much better team around him. I know I've been pretty critical of Stafford at times, saying he's overrated, but reality is I think he's a really terrific quarterback. He just needs better players around him. When he had Calvin Johnson, he was spectacular, but then he retires because the team itself just was not good. They weren't willing to trade him. He did enough in his career to be, no doubt, a first ballot Hall of Famer. So I think for Detroit, though, they got to get a lot better players around him. Matt Patricia, his days are done as a coach, I believe. So I think it's just going to come down to, what Detroit, what can they do in the offseason to make their team better. But overall, though, Green Bay, they're doing a good job so far this season. Aaron Rodgers, like I said, he looks rejuvenated. Chicago, Matt Nagy, you got to do something with that play calling, man. It's not working out so far. Change it up if you have to during the game. Don't be afraid to, because if you keep on riding with what you have so far this season, it's not going to work out. Get a quarterback. You put Mitch in there for one play against the Saints 2 weeks ago. He ends up getting hurt. Nick Foles, he's not mobile. He can throw the ball good, but still, you're having really bad struggles there at that spot. So, Coach Nagy, you got to do something with that play calling. It's not working out. You said if you surrender it, we're not going to know. So, if they do good against Minnesota next week, if the offense is striving, did you change it up then? I don't know. We won't know. But yeah, no doubt this division here kind of up for grabs still at this point, but no doubt Green Bay, though, is riding away with it at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Green Bay, obviously, they have the best quarterback in the division. Aaron Rodgers played really well against a basically dismantled 49er team, so not really anything, too good to say because, look at the week before when they lost to the Vikings. And obviously I think that's also something I'll mention here in a little bit. But obviously I think Green Bay will probably win the division. I just think that they're a better overall team. The defense, though, for the Packers is not great. It's not great at all. So, and I think Alexander was hurt last year too, one of the best corners in the game. So I don't know if he'll be back for the weeks to come. I'm not sure exactly what the injury was, but if you lose him, it's a big blow in your secondary. So obviously the offense is the thing that's keeping them kind of going at this point. They're just not great. It's not great. So it's going to be hard to stop the run. And obviously we saw it against the Vikings when Dalvin Cook just went on basically a tear and scored about 4 touchdowns total just by himself. So, but yeah, I think definitely Green Bay will probably still win the division just because of Aaron Rodgers alone. Obviously, Chicago Bears, good defense, bad offense. Obviously the play calling, like you're mentioning, it's not working. Obviously, Nick Foles is the guy for the time being, but I think don't be surprised if come next season Chicago drafts a quarterback pretty early on in the draft, because I think they just need to kind of start fresh at this point. I think that's the best thing for the organization. Defense is obviously really good. Obviously they've it's hard when your offense isn't scoring points to keep going out there and stopping good offenses because, this is NFL. Offenses are made to score, and they will do that. It's just hard. It beats you down, after a while of being out there, especially when your team isn't scoring. It's hard to, keep motivated, obviously. So, obviously, it's still up for grabs, like you mentioned. I mean, it's still anybody's division at this point between Green Bay and Chicago and even Minnesota. If they keep playing kind of how they're playing, I definitely maybe could see them even squeezing up there too. I mean, there's still a good amount of games to be played left, so we'll just kind of have to wait and see for that. But yeah, Minnesota have been playing a lot better recently. They almost beat Seattle. Obviously, they beat Green Bay. So yeah, they've been playing a lot better too, which I think has to feel good. Incredible the last few weeks as well. And Detroit, obviously Matthew Stafford, good quarterback. But obviously, I think they just, they need a restart. They really do. I think they need to figure something else out. Matt Patricia, like you mentioned, I don't think he's the guy for the Detroit Lions. Been there for a few years now, and I just don't think it's working out. So don't really expect anything for them come postseason time.
No, not at all. I think, like you said, for Detroit, they do need a restart right there. Not saying you need to dump Stafford completely, but still, they'll try and see what you can do there. We know in football rebuilds are kind of tend to go a little bit quicker, like they don't do in baseball. But I definitely think for Detroit, though, they definitely need a restart. So we'll see what happens with that. Now moving on to the NFC South. I know we talked about the Saints and the Buccaneers. Both teams, of course, have 6 wins right now, but the Saints so just ahead there in first place, like you mentioned there with Tampa Bay. It's like one game they look very unbeatable. The next game they just don't have that rhythm that they need to be in. So I think for Tampa Bay and New Orleans, this will come down to the wire for them, depending on where they're at. Of course, for Tampa Bay, they've lost twice to New Orleans, so that kind of comes down to, to that division. The Saints will have the upper hand right there. Of course, for Atlanta early on, they had the big game collapses there against Dallas and Chicago, but now to be 3-6 at this point. Dan, of course, with Dan Quinn, getting the boot. Early on, I think for Atlanta, they do they kind of needed that new voice in there, and of course it'll be interesting to see what they do here in the off season. And of course for Carolina, I know we mentioned there too with Christian McCaffrey being hurt, it's kind of been plaguing their season so far this season. But still to be 3-6 though, I definitely think that's kind of what they needed to do, or that's where they can kind of feel good about being at. So. Again, no doubt, like I said, with the Saints, they own this division right now. For Tampa Bay, we'll see what they can do. Definitely, like I said, it'll come down to the wire for them when it comes to the playoff spot. But for Atlanta and Carolina, 3-6 right now at this point, just kind of ride it out, see where you can go from here. And like I mentioned several times, get into that positive offseason mode.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I think Carolina, kind of like I mentioned earlier, I think they're a good football team. I just think that they've kind of been hurt with injuries. Obviously, losing your main back and Christian McCaffrey for majority of the season hurts. You need him to be out there if you want to win football games. And obviously, he made a really good impact against the Kansas City Chiefs last week. But then, obviously, he had the shoulder injury. So, he'll be out probably for, a few weeks at least. So, obviously, it sucks to see. But I think this is, like I mentioned, I think it's a learning year for the Carolina Panthers. Kind of get, gelled together, basically, if you want to say, with Matt Rule. I think he's done a pretty good job so far. I just think, it's really not their year this year. But I think they have a really good upside for next season, definitely. Atlanta, obviously the offense is really good. Defense is struggling. They've had a lot of injuries on the defensive side of things, but Matt Ryan still can prove that he can throw the ball. Got really good targets. Julio, Calvin Ridley obviously are there. Todd Gurley as well, running the ball. So, and they've been playing better the last few weeks too. I think we have to give them credit as well. But again, it's not your year this year at this point. It's either the Saints or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if not both, because I definitely see both of them definitely making a playoff spot, no doubt about it, in the NFC. Obviously, Tampa Bay, they're just inconsistent, like I mentioned, kind of like how you just said as well. Weeks where looks like anybody can beat them. And then weeks that they, just destroy opponents and don't even give them a chance, like when we saw the Bucs play Green Bay. So just a weird kind of a weird team in general. I don't know if they're just too inconsistent at this point. But they do have Tom Brady, a lot of good offensive weapons. Defense is solid, so I think if they have a good game plan and they come prepared, I think they can beat a majority of the teams. Obviously, New Orleans, great quarterback in Drew Brees. Defense is figuring things out. Obviously, a lot of offensive weapons. Getting Michael Thomas back is huge. Alvin Kamara is huge. Just being out there. This is a really good football team, and they've proved it the last few weeks. They've just been playing really, really well against tough teams. Obviously, they beat Tampa twice now, and would not be surprised if maybe we see them play again, maybe in the playoffs in the next few weeks. But right now, it looks like it's the Saints division at this point, and unless the Saints really just completely collapse, it looks like they'll probably win the division, especially because they hold the tiebreaker over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, come down to the tiebreaker spot, with the Saints, they kind of have the upper hand right now, beating the Buccaneers twice. So that would definitely be interesting to see how that's all going to play out. But for, of course, like I kind of forgot to mention, after Dan Quinn had been fired, Atlanta, they're 3-1 and still, so that's pretty spectacular right there for them. So who knows what's going to happen with them? They could still finish off the season on a good note, but certainly right now it is going to be tough at this point for them to do that. But it's not where you start, it's where you finish, and who knows what's going to happen there with Atlanta. Now moving on to the NFC West, the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, I know you're pretty happy about that. Being at 6-2 right now, Arizona though 5-3. We knew Arizona, boy. To be 5-3 at this point right now for the Arizona Cardinals is pretty spectacular, I would say, for them. But for Seattle, starting off with them, no doubt they are on top of the division right now. Russell Wilson is just having a spectacular season. Last game was not good for him, but you'll have those games here and there where the stats just won't be there for you. But overall, though, for Seattle, they're just having a really good season right now. No doubt they will take first place still, I believe. Arizona, who knows what will happen with them? They're just Kyler Murray's having a really good season so far. DeAndre Hopkins doing a really good job for them as well. For the Rams, started off good. Now it's been kind of going back and forth right there for them, being there at 5-3. We'll see what Sean McVay can do there with his squad. What Jared Goff can do. I know the running game for the Rams has kind of been up and down too previously, right there for them. For San Francisco, just been a bunch of injuries for them so far this year, but to be 4-5 still is pretty spectacular. You lost your best defensive player probably in Nick Bosa there in week 2. Jimmy Garoppolo's been hurt. George Kittle's hurt now.
Yeah.
So to be 4-5 at this point for San Francisco in last place, I know, of course, we knew that this division was going to be tough, whether or not they would be able to stay healthy. But still, to be 4-5 with all the injuries that you've had so far this year, I say that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny to say, too, because obviously if the 49ers were in the NFC East, they'd be in first place.
They would be.
It's pretty funny to think about that. But obviously this is a really tough division. 49ers have just been plagued with injuries. And obviously a lot of people are like, on Twitter or something like that saying, oh, I knew that they would, they wouldn't go back, they wouldn't repeat. But I don't even blame the 49ers for this. Injuries, completely destroyed this team. So obviously, it really does suck. Obviously, they lost a lot of their guys. The Giants or the Jets. It was somewhere at MetLife Stadium, and obviously that's when they lost Bosa, a couple other key names as well. That's when Garoppolo got hurt and he was out for a few weeks. So, it's just a tough season for the 49ers. Hopefully they'll be back. I love the competition between the 49ers and the Seahawks. It's a great rivalry, and obviously it definitely doesn't feel the same when they're not playing at their best, for sure. LA Rams, obviously they suffered a really bad against the Miami Dolphins right before their bye week. And it's funny, interesting enough, the Miami Dolphins have beat everybody in this division besides the Seahawks. So that definitely does tell you something, how Miami is really starting to become a good football team, like we mentioned earlier. So, Rams, I think they have a solid defense, solid offense. Jared Goff, I think he has to be a little bit better. He has to play better against good defenses because Miami is a good defense, and he did not play good against them at all. Arizona, the Cardinals. Obviously, Kyler Murray, like you mentioned, is having a really good season. Defense is good. Buda Baker is an incredible safety. Just goes everywhere on the field. It's hard to look out for a guy like that because he's just so quick and he makes excellent reads on the ball. I think this is me and you, we both talked about it before the season started. This would be a good football team, and they sure are. Obviously, they are coming off of a loss to Miami. I was a huge Miami fan on Sunday, by the way, when Miami won. But yeah, no, this is a really good football team, and even though they only lost by a few against Miami, I definitely think they could easily, no doubt about it, make a wild card spot if Seattle can hold a lead, which I do believe they will, because Seattle has Russell Wilson, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Obviously, like you mentioned, had a tough week against Buffalo. It's hard for him to do it all, though. Obviously, the defense has to step it up, and you got to get their running game back. If they can do those two things, I think this is going to be an excellent team in the NFC, no doubt about it. They just have to get those two things kind of back and running.
Yeah, definitely. No doubt. Again, this division, here, we knew going into the season it was going to be tough. And, of course, right now it is showing that there, even with the 49ers being banged up with all these injuries right now. But still, though, very spectacular division, no doubt. Definitely next year, I think for even probably as seasons go on, this could still be a very tough division, especially with Arizona, too, with how they've just been improving so much. So that will definitely be exciting to see how that's all going to play for them. And for Los Angeles, tough loss for them against Miami. And like you said, Miami going 3-1 against that division. Their only loss being to the best team there, that being Seattle. But still, though, to go 3-1 in that division with those tough opponents, that's pretty spectacular. So definitely be interesting to see how this is all going to play out the rest of the way, not just for the NFC West, but for all of the divisions that we talked about. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, now before we go to break here, like we always do, we always kind of give our predictions for some games. And so for our first one we have here is the Colts and the Titans in AFC South divisional showdown. You know what? The Titans have been going pretty good so far, but I'll give my upper hand though to the Colts in this one. It's gonna be a tough game. I would say tough and close game for them. I'll take the Colts here in this one by a score of 28-24. That'll be my final score prediction for that game.
I think I'm going to go with the Titans. I think they've been kind of figuring things out. Obviously, they had those two rough games, like I mentioned, earlier in the season, or I guess I should say a few weeks ago when they played Pittsburgh and the Bengals. But I think, obviously, Derrick Henry is a force of nature. He's incredibly good. Ryan Tannehill makes good decisions for the most part. They have a good defense. I definitely think they'll have the upper hand against the Colts, but hey, I think it's going to be pretty close. So that's why I'm going to go with the score 27-24 in favor of the Tennessee Titans.
All right. And our next one we have here is the Seattle Seahawks and the Los Angeles Rams. And again, another divisional showdown between these two teams. I'll go with the Seahawks in this one, I think, overall for Seattle. Coming off a tough loss there to Buffalo last week, but I think they'll definitely come back rejuvenated. I know it is going to be a road game for them, but I still think, though, they will have the upper hand against the Rams. For the Rams, it's been kind of a little bit up and down lately for them. I know, like you mentioned, they had that tough loss there to Miami. Unfortunately, I think those tough ones will continue for them, and the Seahawks will prevail in this one. I'll get the Seahawks a score of 34-24.
Yeah, I definitely think Seattle will probably win this game too. And if I know anything about Russell Wilson, is that he always bounces back incredibly well after losses. And I think this is going to be obviously another one of these games where he's going to bounce back. He's going to have a really good game. I think hopefully the defense will play a little bit better if they can get Shaquille back and maybe Quentin Dunbar. Obviously has a better knee, and if they can get those two guys back, Jamal plays a little bit better. Obviously having Dunlap out there, in the trade with the Bengals, he played really good against Buffalo too. So if he can kind of just keep that going, get to the quarterback in Jared Goff, I think Seattle will win this game no problem. So I definitely think it's going to be close because every Seattle Seahawks game is close that I've seen this season. So I'm going to go with the final score being 27-21.
All right. And for our last game we have here, we got the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. Again, another divisional showdown. It's kind of cool how all these games have been divisional matchups here. Vikings, they never do good at Soldier Field. Again, this will be a good matchup here on Monday Night Football, I would think. But the Vikings, though, throughout the past, since 2007, I think the Vikings have won twice there at Soldier Field. Wow. So, they never do good when they go to Soldier Field. So I'll take the Bears in this one by a score of 21-13. I'll take Chicago, my team.
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to go with Chicago as well. I think obviously the defense is going to make it really difficult for Dalvin Cook to kind of get the run game going. I think it's going to be probably low scoring because obviously the Chicago Bears don't really have an offense. So I think it will be a pretty low scoring game, but I do give the benefit to Chicago. Obviously, that's a great stat that you obviously the advantage to the Chicago Bears. I'm going to go with the final score being 17-14.
Alrighty, and there you go. There's some game matchups there, predictions that we gave. Definitely going to be an interesting week of football. As we can say here too. Now starting to get into the grind of it here, where some teams will they start to kind of finally come out and play much harder, or will the teams that are on top will they start to kind of fade away? We'll see what happens with that. Speaking of that, we are going to take our break here. When we come back, we'll dive into some NBA talk. They finally have a set date on when they will begin their 2020 and 21 season. Also dive into some free agency and the draft. Up next here on Time Out with the Guys. Be right back. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Time Out with the Guys. I'm Brad Burton. He is Carter Foley. So now diving into our NBA talk before we end the show here tonight. Kind of shockingly, they were able to get a set date for when they begin their 2020 and 21 NBA season. That will be on December 22nd. Will be a 72-game season, which is really almost close to the almost 82 games that they do. So that'll just be 10 games less, but reality is, when you look at it, this no doubt I think is going to be great for the NBA to kind of now get back on track to where they need to be. Obviously, because when COVID became a much more big issue, when it turned into a pandemic, it halted their season there in March, right before they almost got into the playoffs, and then they began the bubble where they played down when they played down there in Orlando, and ended almost about a month ago now, but. Now here they are beginning in almost just over a month now, which is hard to believe, kind of crazy. It ends, and now all of a sudden it'll be starting back up here. But reality is, though, I knew they probably knew that this was going to be kind of a quick turnaround for them. And I know we're talking about teams like the Lakers, the Heat, the Rockets, teams like that kind of had that went deep into the playoffs and into the NBA Finals. But overall, though, I'm happy about it. I'm glad they were able to get a set date set there. And of course, they did say that free agency will begin on November 20th at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So guys like Anthony Davis, they will hit the market at that time. And the NBA draft will still happen on November 18th. So that's going to be really good to see there too. I know top guys like LaMelo Ball are definitely going to be players that will be talked about. So that will be interesting to see how that's all going to work out. But like I said, I'm excited to see the NBA kind of come back now at what they once were, kind of get back on track there too. I know starting in December kind of reminds me of the lockout season that they had there. They started on Christmas Day, played 66 games, and then they were able to still have a really good season, go into the playoffs there in April, end their season there in June with the finals between the Thunder and the Miami Heat. So it'll be kind of good to see that get back on track. Certainly, like I said, it is going to be a quick turnaround right there for them. But I think players knew that this is how it was going to be, kind of taking that risk there. And I think when you look at teams like the Miami Heat and the Lakers, both teams went to the NBA Finals. When you look at guys like LeBron and Jimmy Butler, I think these guys, no doubt, will be getting some more rest here and there. So let's just say, example, they have back-to-back games. And let's just say they play one night, but then the next night they won't play. That makes sense because they are getting older now. LeBron, 35, be 36 in December. Jimmy Butler, be 32 here, or actually did turn 32 or 31 there, excuse me. So I think overall this was a good, this is a smart decision by Adam Silver, who we've really credited as the best commissioner in all sports right now, no doubt. And it is good to see the NBA get back on track here.
Yeah, absolutely. Me and you were talking about it kind of during the break, how it just feels like the NBA season, just ended and now it's restarting again. So it's kind of it's awesome obviously from a fan and viewer standpoint, of course. And obviously, those guys that did make a deep playoff run, especially the guys in the Lakers and the Heat, they're definitely going to, need a little bit more rest, of course. Especially those guys that are getting older, like you mentioned. But then, some of those teams too that haven't been playing, they haven't played since March. So I bet they're kind of getting ready and excited to get back out on the court too. And it's going to be interesting to see too, kind of what Adam Silver decides of, if there's going to be fans allowed. If obviously, the Toronto Raptors have to figure out where they're going to play because they actually can't go to Canada just because of the rules of back and forth right now because the cases in the United States obviously are not good at all. They're terrible. So obviously the Raptors have to make a decision. Maybe Seattle. I'll be rooting for the Raptors for the season if that were the case. But obviously there's a lot of markets that would probably love to have an NBA team, even if they could only have 5 to 10% of fans allowed in the arena. It's better than nothing. So just kind of have to wait and see. Adam Silver has made great decisions during this pandemic. Obviously, the bubble, great success, and I'm sure he's going to make great decisions too. Obviously, as this next season, comes into play. But excited for free agency, excited for the draft. A lot of really fun and entertaining things to watch if you're an NBA fan coming up to see these young talents, see where they get drafted, see where veteran players go to if they get traded or not. So it's gonna, really good time for the NBA. Excited for the restart, and then it's funny too because when obviously when the season begins, you have the first couple games, and then all of a sudden you have Christmas. So it's going to be really good to watch those Christmas games because it's always a fun time, and NBA always does a really good job of matching up good teams together, and it's always a fun time.
Yeah, they certainly do, and this is just my prediction right now. It'd be no surprise to see the Lakers and the Heat play on Christmas Day. That would not be a surprise if that was to happen, because I always kind of get those NBA Finals rematches that happened the previous season. But yeah, getting to the fans, though, definitely be interesting to see how that's all going to happen. Will there be fans early on? Probably not, just because of all the COVID protocols that are in a bunch of states right now. So that probably won't happen. But maybe as the season carries on, when we get into possibly late winter, early springtime, maybe that's when fans will start to kind of come back. Not, of course, in full crowds, but just in small gatherings there. So that will definitely be something to watch for, to see how they're going to do. And same with the playoffs, too. Maybe if they can go throughout the regular season with no fans, but come playoff time, maybe they could gather some fans there. Kind of like how it was with baseball, kind of in a way. They were able to bring some fans there at the bubble sites. But definitely, though, that'd be curious to see how the NBA, how are they going to work that out. But certainly, no doubt, Adam Silver, I think he'll figure something out. He'll work with his guys to come up with something good, and that would definitely be exciting to see how that's all going to play. But certainly going to be that will be exciting to see how that's all going to work out. But definitely, though, it is good to see the NBA get back on track. And certainly some teams, like you mentioned, I know with Golden State, they haven't played since March. Chicago, of course, the same deal for them. So a lot of these teams, though, that they haven't played there in several months, they're looking to get back and, of course, and ready to play. But teams, of course, like I mentioned, like the Lakers and the Heat, of course, having their seasons end in October, definitely not what maybe they would want. But no doubt, I think players knew that this was going to be a quick turnaround for them. Of course, you had all the time off because of COVID, when the pandemic became a much more bigger problem. So players did have that time off. But definitely, though, it's going to be a quick turnaround for them. Won't be shocked to see some players get that extra rest. Like I said, if you have 3 games in 1 week, no doubt LeBron will probably play 2 out of those 3 games just to give him that extra rest that he needs, because no doubt about the Lakers and, of course, with the Miami Heat, they will be looking to get back to the playoffs and for the Lakers, repeat, keep that championship thing going for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see kind of, how those teams manage obviously the rest of those guys, obviously, like you mentioned, them getting older, but, those teams that haven't played in a few months now, almost a whole calendar year, I bet they're, looking forward to getting back out there and playing with their guys again and playing with new teammates, new draft members as well. So it's going to be interesting to see it's going to be a learning process for everybody in the league. So, it's going to be just kind of have to take it one step at a time. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of those teams that did make it in the postseason pretty far, I think they're going to probably do the same again. I think a lot of the teams will probably, for the most part, stay together. But it's going to be interesting to see kind of what happens during free agency, and obviously, really excited to talk about that on the show. Absolutely,
going to be a really good show next week to kind of give like a little mock draft to see what's happening with that. Free, of course, with free agency, Anthony Davis, I'm calling right now, he will go to Chicago. I'm just kidding, of course. Hey, he's from Chicago. Why not? Yeah. No, I think he'll stick in LA. That's my bold prediction right there. Because I think for the Lakers, I'm not trying to, of course, I don't know what goes on there with that organization. But I think, of course, we know with LeBron kind of nearing up, probably only has about maybe 3-4 years left in this league. Who knows? Maybe Anthony Davis will kind of be that guy that will lead the team then later on. But we'll see what happens with that. That's just what I'm thinking. But obviously, who knows what's going to happen? Maybe, I know after all what's gone on, this whole crazy 2020 year, some guys might be thinking differently. But no doubt, it would not be shocked to see Anthony Davis stay there in LA. Hey, you've been winning there. Why not stay? But maybe he'll challenge himself to go somewhere else to maybe win there. Of course, with the Pelicans, didn't work out for the Lakers during his, one season, although it's been well over a year now since he was traded there to them. But still, be curious to see what's going to happen with that. But with the draft being next week, that'll be exciting to see how that's all going to work out. So definitely can't wait to see how that's all going to play. And same with free agency beginning next Friday too, on November 20th there at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So be ready for that. A lot of players could be signing on with some teams, maybe new teams, maybe they'll stick with the teams that they're on right now. So we'll see what happens with that. Well, it's been a pretty good show. I would say it was good to be back finally after a little hiatus that we had. But overall, though, like I said, it was good to be back and good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And ready to, talk about more NFL games next week. Obviously, the NBA draft and free agency is always really fun. It's obviously kind of one of the most exciting times of the year. Usually it's in the summer, though, and then you have a few months to kind of absorb it and see those guys finally play. So it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, these guys get drafted and obviously get either traded or sign with new teams, and then 2 or 3 weeks later they're already playing with them. So that's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, really excited to watch everything unfold the next few weeks.
Yeah, definitely will be. All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, I'm Brad Burton. He is Carter Foley. Be back here next week. Have a good night.